Ladies and gentlemen, welcome and thank you for joining today's Servicing Community Advantage Loans Part 1. Please note that all participant lines have been muted and will be muted until the Q&A portion of today's call. We will provide you with instructions on how to ask a verbal question at that time. You are welcome to submit written questions during the presentation, and these will be addressed during Q&A. To send in a question, please select All Panelists from the Send to drop-down menu of the chat panel. The chat panel is located on the lower right-hand side of your screen. If you require technical assistance, please send a note to the event producer, or you may call our help desk at 888-796-6118. And with that, I'll turn the call over to Chris Webb, Chief of Community Advantage. Please go ahead.
And thank you. And thank you, everybody, for attending. I know your time is valuable, so we do appreciate your dedication to this webinar. It's why we are proactively wanting to reach out and make sure that we get these subject matters taught. We've had a combination of feedback from OCRM visits on some of the lenders as well as our servicing centers that these were areas of great need for our mission-based lenders, and we want to proactively get this education out to you so that you will be able to address these issues within your organization proactively instead of reactively. So I want to again thank everybody for their dedication to these calls, for their attendance, and for the help of our field office, OCRM, and other partners. I also find that these roundtables and webinars are always advantageous because of the questions you ask. So take advantage. I know they talked about on the instructions here on how to send in a question, but I guarantee you if you have the question, so does somebody else, and that just adds to the depth of education of these webinar series. So again, thank you very much for your attendance. I'm now going to hand things over to Anika, who's going to get the presentation started. So again, thank you all very much. Anika?
Thank you very much, Chris, and once again, welcome to our Community Advantage community for joining us today on this call. Today we're pleased to have John Gossett, who is the Assistant Center Director for Servicing out of our Commercial Loan Service Center in Fresno, and he's going to take the next hour to really hammer in on some of the concerns that OCRM has had. This call and other trainings that we're going to have is very important because this is how you're going to ensure that you're maintaining your portfolios in a manner that SBA requires. As Chris said, there has been some concern from the Office of Credit Risk Management, OCRM, with the manner in which Community Advantage lenders have been managing their portfolios as far as servicing and liquidation, and so we really want to get ahead of any challenges that the Community Advantage lenders may have. I'm going to ask you again, please make sure you take advantage of John's presence. Ask as many questions as you can. John is going to try to get through them. What he does not get through today, we are recording this call. We will capture your questions, and we will make sure and address any questions via writing that John may or may not get to you today. So without further ado, I want to turn it over to John. John, thank you for being with us, and take it away.
All right. Thank you very much, Anika. Now, really quickly, I'm with the Commercial Loan Service Center in Fresno, California. There is one other commercial loan service center that would be sending servicing requests to, and that would be in Little Rock, Arkansas. So let's just get started here on our presentation. So here we go. We're going to be talking about 7A loan servicing, which also is our Community Advantage servicing. Contact information. So roles of the servicing centers, both in Little Rock and in Fresno, we do loan servicing. We do express purchases, we do 504 loan purchase, and we do post-servicing actions. So the two things that your institutions would most likely be interested in would be the servicing and the purchase. So if you think of you have a small loan, obviously CA, Community Advantage, those loans are up to $250,000. Where am I going to send it if I have a servicing question or a purchase question? It's going to come to either Fresno or Little Rock. So on this slide, we have contact information for the individuals here in Fresno. The next slide, we have the contact information for the individuals in Little Rock, Arkansas. And here is the major contact information for Fresno: address, telephone, general telephone number, general email. And the same thing here for Little Rock, Arkansas. So let's drop into this. We have a slide here that is the picture of the United States. And you'll notice it's green and yellow. Well, green tells you if the property is located, the actual property is located, or the address of the business is located in one of the green states, it's going to come to the Commercial Loan Service Center in Fresno, California. If it is in the yellow, it'll then go to Arkansas. Now, we do notice on here there's Arkansas and Louisiana, and for some reason, Louisiana is not allowed to send their requests to Arkansas. I think that's because of the LSU Tigers and Arkansas Razorbacks. I'm not sure, but that's one of my suspicions that I've had. So if you're in a state that is maybe on a border state here where you potentially could be having loans in either or of states, make sure you have this on your desktop. That way you'll know where to send your servicing request. So let's talk about, hey, I've approved my loan through Delegated Processing Center or through non-delegated, right? So what happens in this situation? Anything that has been approved through the Loan Processing Center does not get transferred over to one of the Commercial Loan Service Centers, the CLSC, until final disbursement on a term loan, and if it's a revolving loan, partially dispersed, the initial disbursement. Now, I don't think Community Advantages, those loans are allowed any revolving lines. So the thing to remember here is, has my loan had its final disbursement? Now, this is whether or not the loan has been done delegated or non-delegated. So I'm a delegated lender. When do I send my request to Fresno or Little Rock? It's when my term loan has had the final disbursement. If it has been approved through the processing center, non-delegated, my term loan comes to Fresno after final disbursement, or Little Rock after final disbursement. Now, what happens after final disbursement? Let's think in terms of loan servicing for Community Advantage loans. A couple things that I've got to do. Number one, I've got to make sure that I'm doing my 1502 report, okay? And the second thing is, I am to comply, or my Community Advantage lenders must comply with the 5057-2 Loan Servicing and Liquidation F Standard Operating Procedure when I am servicing my CA loans. You do have your Community Advantage product guide or information guide, but you're also going to be looking at the 5057-2 for your servicing request. So make sure that you have access to the 5057-2. There's two ways you can find that. Number one is you can do a Google search. Google is a wonderful thing, as my kids tell me, and it will pop up. You can also go to SBA.gov, and if you go to SBA.gov, make sure you're in Internet Explorer, because if you go in under Chrome, sometimes things don't open properly. So if I'm going to find the 5057-2, I'm going to go to SBA.gov. I can search for it. I can also find it through partners. Click on For Partners. And then when it comes up 7A lender or 504, I would click on a 7A lender, and it'll drop down, and you can actually find those standard operating procedures. I personally have the 5057-2 on my desktop because I refer to it every single day. So, two things we have to remember. The Form 1502, I've got to be working on that, and my 5057-2 I need on my desktop. Changes after final disbursement. Let's take a look at this. Servicing centers, we service all 7A loan programs in our jurisdiction. That's the borrower's physical address. So if you think back to that map that we have, if the physical address is in one of those green states, once again, it goes to California. If it's a yellow state, then it goes to Little Rock, Arkansas. We also look at the 5010-5 series, and as a Community Advantage lender, you're also going to make sure that you need to go to the 5010-5 series of standard operating procedures. You might say, why would I need to do that? There might be an assumption that you're working on or some eligibility questions or something. You're going to want to go to the 5010-5 series at the date the loan was approved in E-Tran. Now, we're going to have a cheat sheet for you here in just a second, okay? Now, we're looking at the loans. Loan Servicing, SOP 5057-2. Now, you'll notice I reiterated this more than once. That's because it's fairly important. Now, whether or not you did the loan delegated or non-delegated, once the loan is fully dispersed, all 7A lenders have delegated authority. You will have delegated authority in your servicing actions. Okay? Keep that in mind. Now, the Community Advantage product guide, information guide, it actually lets you know that once it is in the servicing status or fully delegated or fully dispersed and it's a loan servicing, then you follow the 5057-2, which means you become like a 7A lender at that point. Now, one of the most important pieces that you're going to need is the 7A lender matrix, and that's going to tell you what needs SBA approval and what does not need SBA approval. We're going to get to that in just a second. Now, when I look at this, I may have a question about a servicing action, and it doesn't show up in the 5057-2. I've gone through all the 5010-5 series. I've gone through my Community Advantage participant guide, and there's nothing that addresses my exact question. Okay? That's that question. That's the one that we don't have that answer for. Well, what do? Number one, we service that loan using prudent lending standards just like we would on our non-SBA portfolio. So I wanted to address that one up front. If it doesn't show up anywhere, you can always feel free to call Fresno or Little Rock. But if it doesn't show up anywhere, start with, is this prudent lending, and would I do this on my non-SBA portfolio? So let's go to the next slide here. Oh, look, here is a cheat sheet. You're going to want to, I literally have this on the wall next to me. You're going to want to have this on the wall next to you because maybe you have a Community Advantage loan that was completed November of 2017, and maybe I have to refer to the 5010-5 series of that loan and when it was approved. How do I know? Well, this cheat sheet will actually help you to do that. And you'll notice it says loans approved 1/1/2017 to 12/31/2017 on the lower right-hand side. That tells me it's the 5010-5I. A great thing that we have now on our website is when you go to SBA.gov and you pull up the section of the 5010-5 series, they now list the approval dates on them. But you're going to want to have it. I have it on my desktop and on my wall next to me. You're going to want to have this on your desktop and wall next to you. So that's a great help. Now, when we're reading through our standard operating procedures, there's two words that we're looking for, should and must. Should, it's a guideline. If it's a must, that is something that is required. It ties our hands. Classic example of that is in the 5057-2, to release a guarantor, it says the loan must be seasoned. So when it says must, our hands are tied. So think of those two words, should and must. They are going to be things that we want to find in our standard operating procedure when we have a question regarding a servicing action. Now, where do I find the 7A matrix? If you don't already have one, where can I find it? Well, you can always call us. You can always, though, go to Capital Access, otherwise known as E-Tran. And the front page of E-Tran, before you sign in, you have a page that looks like this, a portion of the page. And you'll notice right here it says Unilateral Action Matrix, and that is version 14. You're going to want to have that on your desktop. I have it on my desktop. I have it printed up. I have it laminated, all kinds of fun stuff. So let's go then and find and look at the 7A matrix. So I'm a Community Advantage lender. My loan has been fully dispersed, and I have a servicing question. And I'm going to look on here and find where is that question. And let's say it is something that says, I know, release of borrower and guarantor. I bring that one up because that's probably one of the most common ones that we see. And if you look at the 7A matrix, you'll notice how it's set up. There's blue and red columns. Blue means it's a unilateral action. You have been delegated that authority to make that decision. Red means you need SBA's approval. So just keep that in mind. Red, you're dead, right? So red, we need SBA approval. Now there's three blue columns. One says E-Tran is required. One says notify the center. And one says no notification required. So that's kind of what we're going to look at. So I get a question coming, or a servicing question coming in. And my first question I always ask is, has this loan been dispersed or not? If it has not been fully dispersed, it's going to go somewhere else. And that's going to go to the Loan Guarantee Process Center. And you'll notice the first paragraph of matrix that we have. It says approved loans prior to final disbursement. That section is if you've got a loan, it has been fully dispersed, that means it's going to go to the Loan Guarantee Process Center, otherwise known as the LGPC. Otherwise, we say Sacramento. Now, if the loan has been fully dispersed, my final disbursement has been made, then it's going to go to either Fresno or Little Rock. Now I'm going to ask the question on it, does this require approval or not? You'll notice there's a gold bar on the left side. Everything under that gold bar, as we look to the right, shows up as red X's. That means it requires SBA approval. So I look on here and it says release borrower of guarantor. If I have a request to release a borrower of guarantor, that requires SBA approval. I'm going to submit a request to Fresno and or Little Rock based upon what? Where is the address of the borrower, location of the borrower. So now I submit that to Fresno. We're good, okay? What about another servicing question? Maybe there's an increase. And you'll notice on here that the increase is in two sections. It's under that gold section where it says increased loan amount on loans approved by standard 7A loan guarantee process centers. And you'll notice that has a red X by it. But also, you'll notice it says increase down here under the section that says it does not need SBA approval. It's a unilateral action. What is the difference? If it has been if the loan was approved delegated, then it requires SBA approval. If the loan was approved delegated, it does not require SBA approval. If the loan was approved non-delegated, it requires SBA approval. So I'm a community advantage lender. I've got a loan that I have had approved through SBA general processing, and now I need to do an increase. I've got to send that into the center. Now, here's a minefield. We do not want to tell our borrower, let's see if we can get it approved first. And here's why. With the SBA first, and here's why. If I submit a request to the SBA, to Fresno, and I'm going to increase a loan, a community advantage loan, I did it for $100,000, now I'm doing it for $150,000, the minute SBA approves that increase, there potentially could be an additional guarantee fee. I originally did the loan for $200,000. I'm going to $250,000. There's going to be an additional guarantee fee. It just kind of depends on what the waivers were and all that kind of stuff. So keep in mind, on an increase, if you did it general processing or non-delegated, you want to have everything lined out first. I would let the borrower know what that additional guarantee fee will be. I would even try and collect that money up front, because once I submit it to the SBA and it gets approved, that additional guarantee fee becomes due and payable within 30 days. If you don't pay it within 30 days, then the SBA cancels the whole entire guarantee. Now, I bring this up. You cannot believe how many conversations I have with banks every week on this very issue. So if I've done an increase, or if I want to do an increase and my loan was approved delegated authority, I can go through, I can do my credit memo, my credit write-up, I approve that increase, I'm going to do my loan documents, I'm going to collect that additional guarantee fee, and then I'm going to go into E-Tran and I'm going to increase the loan in E-Tran under the loan approval amount. Once again, if I look at this on the 7A matrix and I've done it delegated authority, that increase says that I go into E-Tran and I just use E-Tran. So once I approve it in E-Tran under the approval amount, that loan has been increased and an additional guarantee fee is due. You'll notice how I am emphasizing this because I get calls on this literally every day. Now, we've got an increase. We've talked about the increase, whether it's been approved through the delegated process or the non-delegated process. Now let's look at a few other things on here. There's another one that I want to look at that we get a lot of, and that is a maturity extension. And we get to that point, we want to extend maturity. Well, we can. We can extend maturity up to 10 years beyond original maturity for orderly repayment of the loan. So we get to a point, maybe we want to extend maturity. If the loan has not matured, then I just go into E-Tran and make that change on the first page of E-Tran, of the servicing side of E-Tran. It'll have a blue box that says maturity date. I can just change that. If I want to extend maturity after the stated maturity date, then what I've got to do is submit a request to Fresno and or Little Rock for that maturity extension. Okay? Now you're going to notice something when we're reading through these. You'll notice there are these little red numbers on there. So I'm going to talk about a subordination right now because, and that's on the second side, and if you're looking at the slide that I'm looking at, it's on the second side. It's the very first one at the top, and it says subordinate/release lien. Maybe we've done our loan. Maybe we've taken the primary residence as collateral, and our borrower is going to refinance the first on their house. So we've decided, do we subordinate or do we release this? That is a decision that the lender could make. That is a unilateral action. And it even tells us no notification required. But we need to document our file on what we're doing. But you'll notice there is a little red number up there, and that is a footnote. So we want to always check what the footnotes say. And in this case, that footnote actually says that it should not confer a preference to the lender. So maybe I have another loan that I'm doing. I'm actually doing the first on the house. So I have my 7A loan or my Community Advantage loan. I have the loan on my house. Excuse me, I have the lien on my borrower's house. The first lien is with Bank of America, and we're going to refinance out of Bank of America. If my lending institution refinances that, that becomes a preference. We need approval from the SBA. But if that's what a preference means. So if there's no preference, then I'm okay. We'll also notice there's another little red footnote that talks about loans being sold on the secondary market. And I notice here, Community Advantage lenders can sell loans on the secondary market according to the participant guide. If I have sold that loan on a secondary market and I'm doing something like changing the maturity, like decreasing the loan amount, or anything like that, that deals with the loan, that needs secondary market investor approval. So maybe I want to extend maturity. The loan has been sold on the secondary market. I would need to go to the secondary market and ask for approval on that. How do I do that? I submit that request to Colson Services, the same place that I'm submitting my 1502 report. And then they will respond on that. So I'm going to ask questions. I get a servicing action in. My first question is, has this loan been finally dispersed or not? Have I dispersed this loan fully? Number two, has this loan been sold on the secondary market? And once I get through both of those questions, then I'm pretty well set for what I'm going to be doing. So the moral of this page is have this 7A Lenders Matrix on your desktop, have it on the wall next to you. Every time you get a servicing request, take a look at it. Does it show up on here? If it shows up on here, what am I supposed to do? Oh, put it into E-Tran. Notify the center. If it does say notify the center, all I do is send an email into the center. If it says no notification required, like subordinate or release lien, or even defer payments, I'm going to do a 6-month deferment. What do I need to do? Document my file accordingly. And what I tell people, what I tell banks is, whatever decision you've made and you're doing, and it says no notification required on the 7A matrix, write up a quick little memo that says here's what we're doing, why we're doing it. Take a copy of the 7A matrix here and put it on there with you or with that decision that you made. That way, if you do have a question, if OCRM comes in and takes a look at it, and you can say, yeah, we released this lien on the house, which was secondary collateral. Here's why we released it. Maybe they had sold their primary residence and they're trying to buy a new one, and we're trying to subordinate collateral, and they have a Fannie Freddie loan, and Fannie Freddie will not allow us to close with a lien behind it. So maybe we've released that lien because the loan has been on the books for 5 years, it's paid down by 50%, whatever it is, and it's paid as agreed. It's got a debt service coverage of 2.3 to 1 or something like that. Whatever that decision is, we're going to document that, put it in there. That way, if OCRM comes in and looks at it and says, what did you do? Here's what we did. Here's why we did it, and here was our authority to do it. Secondly, if you ever have to send a loan into Fresno or Little Rock for purchase, and a question comes up, hey, why did you release this lien? why did you do whatever it is that you did? Here's what we did. Here's why we did it. And here's our authority that we use. And that will help you far beyond all you can imagine. Now, next page on this. I've got to watch my time here. So my next page, let's go to the next page. This is the 7A matrix continued. This is where you have all of your footnotes. And footnote 6 is the footnote that talks about the loan being sold on the secondary market. Footnote 3 is the footnote that talks about that lenders are reminded not to engage in any preference, any action that might confer a preference onto them. A couple other things here. You'll notice at the top of this, it does give you the contact information of where to submit your request. There's the National Guarantee Purchase Center if you're looking to get a loan purchased and it's a larger loan. Of course, you all are Community Advantage lenders, and I think the maximum is $250,000. So you would be sending it either to Fresno or Little Rock, and if you'll notice on there, it says Commercial Loan Services, CLCS West Fresno, CLCS East Little Rock. And it does even have our website, a link to our website. Now, if I have this on my computer, I can actually click where it says Fresno, and it will build the email for me of where I'm going to submit my request. Same thing with Little Rock. I could just click on that, and it will build that email for me. So we've looked at the 7A matrix. You all should immediately have one of these, either on your desktop or printed up on the wall next to you. I have both, and you can always find them through, once again, the front page on the CAF system or Capital Access, otherwise known as E-Tran. So what are we doing here? Everything that we're doing, we want to protect our guarantee. So if I'm going to do any kind of servicing action, right, and it does not require the prior written consent, it is a unilateral action, the 3 words to remember are document, 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 plus add a copy of the matrix in effect. And that's currently, if you're doing something right now, it's this matrix. It doesn't matter when that loan was approved. If you're looking for authority, it is going to be on the current matrix in effect. And that's version 14 right now. All right, let's go to the next one here. Oh, E-Tran. Now, I mentioned a few things. I talked about a guarantee fee. I talked about going into E-Tran and extending the maturity date and that kind of thing. Now, when that tells you to do that, you go right on in. And when I go into E-Tran and make that change in maturity, it shows it there right away. Well, you can see it. That's instant validation. You know that it's correct. I looked at it. That's the maturity date that I want. There it is. It's done. Instant turnaround on my servicing action. There's a couple other things you'll notice. There is a guarantee fee calculator built into E-Tran servicing. Now, it's not called guarantee fee. It is called what if. And if you click on the what if button, it will give you a drop-down box, and it says, hey, what do I want to do? Do I want to change my loan amount? Do I want to extend my maturity? It gives you a number of those options. It's very important to use the what if button and not change the loan amount in E-Tran. If you change the loan amount in E-Tran, it will automatically bill you for an additional guarantee fee. If I go into the what if button, it might tell me, or not might, it does tell me what my guarantee fee is going to be if I make these changes. Now, one thing to remember about a maturity date. When I click on the what if button, and if my maturity date is 12 months or less, and I'm extending maturity beyond 12 months for the first time, that is going to potentially give me an additional guarantee fee. Now, why is that? On loans of 12 months or less, if we've got a guarantee fee, if I've done a loan and there was a waiver, my loan amount may not have that guarantee fee, but it might. I go 12 months or less, my guarantee fee is 1/4% or 1/4 point. Now, 12 months later, I extend maturity beyond 12 months. What could happen there? My guarantee fee can go from 1/4 point to 1.5 to 3 to 3.5 to 3.75. It just depends on how many other companion loans that borrower has. And those are loans approved within 90 days of each other. Now, why am I emphasizing the what if button? Because you want to find this stuff out prior to putting it into E-Tran, prior to submitting that request and getting it approved, because I want to know what that guarantee fee is going to be if there's going to be one. So there is that guarantee fee button. It is the what if button. When you get off here, I'd open up one of my loans, and I would just click on the guarantee, not the guarantee fee button, but the what if button. Click on the what if button because we do have a button that says guarantee on it. click on the what if button, and that will show you what it is, what the guarantee fee will be. Now, I will give a caveat in there regarding the what if button. If I have like 8, 10 loans that are all companion loans, depending upon what I'm doing, there might be some problems in there with other loans and things like that. If I've got 1 or 2 loans, I'm using the what if button. If I've got 8 to 10 loans that are all within 90 days of each other, I might actually call a center or I personally do the calculations by hand. That way I know that they're right, just because I have a calculator for it. So that's our E-Tran. Also in E-Tran, if you do have questions regarding E-Tran, you can always contact your local district office for E-Tran guidance and training. So let's move on. 1502 reporting. Now, I'm not going to get into the nuts and bolts of the 1502 reporting right now. That's next time, next month. But here are some errors. Here are some problems that we see that are constant. So let's just start with this. You've got to do your 1502 report. Okay, the 5010-5 series says you've got to do it. When do you have to have it done? Okay, this is one of those fun little things we talk about. It's the 3rd calendar day of each month, unless the next business day of the 3rd is not the 3rd, is a business day plus 2 days plus grace period, right? What does that equal? Well, probably about the 7th day of the month. Just think, I got to get it done the 1st week of the month. Okay, keep that in mind. Now, you want to have more than one person doing your 1502 report. Even if you're in a small office, if you can have 2 people that are doing it, one does it one month, one does it the next month, that is so much better for you. And here's why. If you have sold a loan on the secondary market and you are late with your 1502 report, that can cause you to have a late payment, just like on your mortgage on your house. Okay? So, if you're doing 1502 reports, I want to see 2 people doing it. I worked for a bank. I came in, I took it over. They had me doing it by myself, and I tried to get somebody else to help out. Hey, if I'm not there, guess what's going to happen? There's going to be a problem. When I left, I made sure that the lady who did it previously, before I got there, that she was good at it, because it can cause problems for you. So remember, 1st week. Think in terms of the 1st week. You have the 3rd calendar day of each month, or the next business day if the 3rd calendar day is not a business day, plus 2 business day grace period. Think 1st week. Now, it is the lender's responsibility. It is your responsibility to know what loans to report, and not Colson. So, what does that mean? If you have an SBA loan, it needs to be reported to Colson. It needs to be reported. Even if they didn't make a payment, you still report it to Colson. A couple of important things. Go to Colson's website. Get familiar with it. There is a 1502 fee calculator on their website. You probably already have that, but it's there. That is the actual 1502 report. They just call it the 1502 fee calculator. And there's their website right there. Some common errors. Probably the most common error we see is a loan that is reported as 6 when it doesn't need to be reported as 6. So what does that mean? What does that mean? Okay, I've got a loan. It's on the secondary market. I have to repurchase it from the secondary market. I repurchase it from the secondary market, and I think, oh, we paid the loan. We report it as a 6. No, you're going to report it as you normally would. If I'm reporting a loan that I have transferred, so you can do what's called a transfer of participation. It goes from one lender to another. If my loan has been taken from my institution to another institution, I'm going to show it as a code 7, not as a code 6, because a code 6 says paid in full, and that's not what's happening there. Once a loan has matured, the system will automatically mark that loan as paid in full after a period of time, right? So that's going to show as paid in full. You might have something that shows up as a canceled loan if the guarantee fee has not been paid within 90 days of approval. So you may be trying to report something and it's coming back, hey, this thing's been paid in full, or this loan has been canceled. Those would be errors also. So the thing you want to remember with Colson, and we don't have any revolving lines here, so I'm going to skip that part. Okay, loan balances greater than approved loan amount. Make sure that you're think in terms of errors and what do you call that when you transposition errors, right? What is my loan amount? My approved loan amount and my loan balance. My loan balance cannot be greater than my loan approved amount. We see that sometimes on 1502 reports. Think in terms of when my next installment due date is. I got a call from Okram. They said, hey, we have a problem on here. This loan looks like it's in default. Tell me what's going on. As we reviewed the 1502 report, we noticed that the next installment due date was in 2017 all of a sudden. Well, we're in 2018. So that was just a transposition error. So keep that in mind. Make sure when you look at it that you're careful with next installment due dates, interest paid to dates, and the codes that you're using. And loan numbers. Make sure you have the correct loan number on there. Here is Colson's contact information. Oh, by the way, think dashboard. You've got a 1502 report. You get that little letter from Colson that says there's an error on it. You're like, oh, no, it's an error. If you are registered with Colson on their dashboard, you can go right on in and make corrections. It's very easy. If you don't have access to dashboard, by the end of today, I would get access to dashboard. I would call Colson and I would actually get it. I had it with the bank that I work at, and it made it so much easier when we had a problem with an error on some transposition error that I made. It was so much easier to correct it by going into dashboard. Now, let's think about something else. We've got a seasoned loan, okay? And I talked about a guarantor being released and the loan needs to be seasoned. So what does it mean to be seasoned? Let's take a look. Now, think of paying it appropriately, paying on time, right? It's seasoned when it's got 18 months of payment since funding. It's paid as agreed for the last 12 months. Collateral at or near loan approval levels. Now, why do you say at the last 12 months? We might have had a 3-month deferment in there that has been met. Maybe we did a loan and at initial funding we've got to defer it because there's been some holdups when you have like disbursement of funds and things like that. So 18 months since funding, paid as agreed. Last 12 months, maybe we had a problem at 16 months into the loan, and now they have made that problem. They've cured the default, and now we have another 12 months. So keep that in mind. 18 months plus we've got 12 months since any other issues, right? Collateral at or near loan approval levels and financial statements are favorable and satisfactory in other respects. By the way, if they have sold collateral to make a payment, that is not a seasoned loan. So that was seasoned loans. Let's look at increases. We talked about this already. You've got a term loan. So there's a couple of things that we want to address here. Number one, if I am increasing a loan more than 20% of the original loan amount or is more than 18 months after the original approval date, then there's things I'm going to have to do in my write-up. Number one is I've got to make sure that my analysis there is appropriate for that increase. I've got to show that, number one, it's the same purpose as the original use of proceeds, and number two, my borrower's cash flow can support the increased amount. So those are the two things. This is not a revolving line. You don't have revolving lines. All you have to remember is 7A loan, 20% is the magic number. If it's more than 20% of the original loan amount, I've got to show that it's the same purpose as the original use of proceeds, and the borrower's cash flow can support the increased payment amount. Also, if it's more than 18 months after the original approval date. The next number to remember is 48 months, because I can no longer do an increase once my 48 months is passed, because that's the amount of time I have to make disbursements on a term loan. So I can do increases within the first 48 months. After 48 months, I can no longer do an increase on that loan. Now, maximum loan amounts, you're going to have to go to this, I say California because it's CA, I'm sorry about that, Community Advantage Product Guide, and that shows $250,000 is the maximum there. Let's see here. If the loan was sold on the secondary market and we want to do an increase, we have to get secondary market approval, and there is an additional guarantee fee due within 30 days of the date of SBA approval of the increase. Once again, you'll notice how I've emphasized this. Because of the guarantee fee, the additional guarantee fee, you're going to want to really pay attention to that on any increase. Maturity extensions. I talked about this a little bit already. Unilateral action if the loan is not matured. I can go up to 10 years beyond original maturity date. By the way, when we see that thing that says applicable guarantee fee, I extend the loan beyond 12 months. That first extension, I've got that additional guarantee fee. there is a note here. Lenders are not required to pay an additional guarantee fee if a maturity date extension is needed to aid in the orderly liquidation of the loan and no additional funds are dispersed. So maybe I did my loan for, 2 years. Now I'm going to do an extension of maturity, and I go out 10 years. I can't increase that loan later. Because why? This is for orderly liquidation. Or excuse me, if I did it 12 months, 12 months, I did my loan for 12 months, and now I extend it beyond 12 months, and it's for orderly liquidation, I can't do an increase. It's done, it's orderly liquidation, and I don't pay that additional guarantee fee. So keep that one in mind. Subordinations, unilateral unless there's a preference involved. I don't really see too many community advantage lenders having the preference involved. I don't know if you're doing any other lending outside of the SBA, but if you have another loan that's not an SBA loan and you're trying to do some kind of subordination for your other loan, an SBA, you want the SBA loan to be subordinated to that, then you'll need our approval. So I'm going to skip that one. Obligor changes. We get a lot of these. We're substituting a guarantor. If I'm substituting the person, do they have equal or greater strength? What is the net worth of the person coming in compared to the person going out? Keep that in mind. Now I'm going to jump over here, and I'm going to go to here. Let's move this because of my time, and I want to get some the ability to have some questions in here. How do I get an approval? How do I submit an action? John, you're talking about submitting action. How do I get an action approved? How do I submit it? What do I do? All right, we're going to put an email together, and we're going to send it to fsc.servicing@sba.gov or LRS, I can't even think of Little Rocks, fsc.servicing@sba.gov. And we're going to put a request together. Outline the request. Start with outlining. And you'll notice I have a bullet point on here that says, please, no, war, and peace. We'll get a 37-page credit memo, and that's all we get. And somebody says, hey, we want to release this person or whatever, and that's all we get is a 37-page credit memo. It makes it very difficult for us to look through it. So think bullet point, no, war, and peace. I mean, I like reading. I've read Lord of the Rings multiple times. That's a long book. When I'm working in the SBA, I don't want to read that. So how do I do that? And I'm just going to go to the fun basic outline here. Think about how you would write this to submit it. How would you want to see the information? Right? So let's start with this. Let's say we're doing a release of guarantor. And you'll notice now on here, I've given you kind of a cheat sheet. What is the SOP that talks about the release of guarantor? Well, that's the SOP 5057 if you're a community advantage lender. And if you're a CDC and you're doing a 504 loan, it's 5055. So for you all, most of you are going to be thinking in terms of community advantage. It's the 5057. Now, when was the loan approved? To me, I want to know when the loan was approved. When was it dispersed? Okay, you'll notice here it's dispersed the same day. I've got my loan approval amount. Now, this I use for everybody, but you might have a loan approved amount of $200,000. What is the current balance? Think about that. If I have approved a loan for $200,000 and my balance has been paid down to like $50,000, hey, that covers a multitude of sins. If I've got a loan for $200,000 and my balance is $194,000, I've got, I'm going to think about it more. Is this a seasoned loan? Is it not a seasoned loan? So if you write it like this, it makes it real easy for you to know what's going on. It makes it real easy for us here at the SBA to know what's going on. Now we want a summary. So what are we going to do? We're going to do a release. Here's loan information. We're requesting a release of the guarantor, Mama Calf. Now, some of you are going to know who that is. Some of you are too young to know who this is. But just think of McGuinn and McGuire, still getting higher in L.A. You know where that's at. So here's the reason. She has no ownership in the business or business assets. At origination, a residence was going to be taken as collateral. The residence was 100% owned by her. The residence was removed prior to funding due to not meeting the equity requirements. However, the guarantee was not. So what are we saying? We're saying what happened here? Why? In this scenario that I built, this is kind of like an error. She was taken when she shouldn't have been taken. There could be anything. There could be a divorce. There could be whatever it is, right? We want to know what the reason is. It's an assumption. We're doing an assumption. Somebody's coming on. The new guy's coming in. The old guy wants to be released. What is happening here? So what's our reason? Now, what's the impact on the business? In this case, there's no material impact on the business. There might be, The person that's leaving might be the one who's been running the business. This is the owner who knows everything that's going on, and he's selling the business to his subordinate, and he wants out, and the subordinate's been there a year. I don't know, right? Keep in mind, what is the impact on the business? Hey, what were the obligors before? Here we have the Mamas and the Papas LLC. What is their net worth? John Phillips, Michelle Phillips, Denny Doherty, and Mama Cass. This is actually a group from the 60s into the early 70s called the Mamas and the Papas. And I don't know if any of you remember the song California Dreamin', but that's who did it. All right, so here's what we have. And you notice we've got net worths on there, and that helps us to take a look. Because let's say Mama Cass had a net worth far greater than everybody else. I may not want to release her. It depends on what's been happening on the loan. You can also write it this way, where you go obligors before, and you can also write obligors after. Either way works for us. You'll notice on the obligors before, we have Mama Cass guarantor to be released, and here it shows obligors after who's remaining. It just makes it easy for people to see what's going on. I'm going to do a financial analysis. What is my debt service coverage? Well, let's see, in 2015 it was 1.25, 2016 1.37. Do I have a collateral analysis? Collateral is all business assets, so I don't have good collateral on it, but of course it is an SBA loan, which means 87% of all those loans are under collateralized. So would I release this person or not? And that's what we want. We want that information. If I've got a credit memo, now I'm going to attach my credit memo. So if I write something up like this, it's very easy to read, easy to understand, and I submit it into the SBA to Fresno or to Little Rock, it'll be so much easier for them to read it. We do get requests that come in that say, release this person, here's our credit memo, and it's a 37-page credit memo. Makes it so much harder for us. It'll make it so much easier for you to write it out like this. It just helps. Now, I call this an outline. I do not call this a template because you don't want to leave out pertinent information. An example might be that we want to do an assumption of the business. And here's what happened. This is actually a true story. Gentleman builds a restaurant, built it up from ground zero, loves it, has it for about 20 years, turns around, sells it to somebody else. The SOP says that that gentleman who sold it cannot assume that loan. He can't come back in later. Less than 2 years later, our new borrower ends up on the front page of the newspaper, arrested, child sex trafficking or something like that. I saw the newspaper. Our original seller comes back and says, wait a minute, that's my restaurant. I don't want it to go down because that loan's dead at this point. I want to assume the loan. Now, we had two options. Option number one was we do not allow the assumption and pay the guarantee on the loan. Option number two was allow the assumption, let the loan continue. Now, in this case, we view this as a workout. Our borrower was arrested, was behind bars. This was a workout, and we were able to make that work. The moral of the story is don't leave out pertinent information, okay? Now, I want to adjust a couple of things because I'm looking at my time here. If I have a loan that has been sold on the secondary market, why do we like selling loans on the secondary market? Funds come back into us. But what happens when we do that? It ties our hands. Investor approval is required. If we want to adjust the interest rate, if we need to modify the rate, lower it, whatever, increasing the loan amount, extension of maturity, change to a seasonal periodic payment plan, modification of the installment amount, change to interest accrual basis, deferment of payments more than 3 months. You can do a one-time deferment of 3 months where you don't need investor approval. That's a unilateral action. After that, it needs investor approval. So if we've got loans that have been sold on the secondary market and Community Advantage, you are able to do that according to the Community Advantage information guide. If I've done that, that poses me some problems. So what if I need to make some kind of change? And I submit my request to the investor. And I need to lower the interest rate because I've got a borrower who's got problems. And we sold this off. We go to modify the interest rate. We're going to lower the interest rate, re-amortize the loan, help the borrower out, and the investor says no. Chances are they're going to say no. What does that mean? Now, what we can do, we have a couple of options. Number one, we can request a repurchase from the secondary market. And we go right back to the lender, and the investor would say, hey, we'd like to purchase this back. That is on a willing buyer, willing seller relationship. So we've asked for the modification. He says no. We said, hey, well, can we buy it back? He says no. We go right to the SBA for what's called an emergency repurchase from the secondary market. That emergency repurchase does require our approval. And the key word on this is viability of the loan, viability of the business, okay? If we're just doing it because we're in competition with another lender and we don't want that loan refinanced, well, we can't do that for an emergency repurchase. It's the viability. Once again, viability of the business. Now, if I've got a loan that's greater than 60 days in default, I've got to make a decision. Do I get this repurchased from the secondary market? At 120 days, it will probably get repurchased by the SBA. So if you have a loan that's 60 days or greater in default, you have two options. You can have the SBA purchase it back, or you can purchase it back. If the SBA purchases it back, and of course this is tomorrow's class, if the SBA purchases it back, you have 45 days to submit your purchase demand kit to the SBA. So, investor, secondary market, it can be a great thing for you, but it ties your hands, and you have to get approval for any changes, and you may have to do an emergency repurchase from the secondary market for modifications of the loan for viability of the borrower. There is what's called a transfer of participation. And if you've got somebody else that's gone someplace else, and you've got your customer, your client, and they want another place to take that loan over, that's called a transfer of participation. It can be done. Page 5050, SOP 505072. Gotta love it when I talk about the SOPs. Both people need to agree. Both lenders need to agree, and they both need to sign the transfer of participation. And it has to be requested by the borrower. You may have a borrower that comes to your institution. There's a CA loan someplace else. That borrower has to request that for it to work. Helpful hints on protecting the guarantee. And we're about done here because we need to have a few minutes for questions. Always close your loan according to the loan authorization. Make sure you're familiar with your loan authorization. Be familiar with the Community Advantage Product Information Guide, right? Document, document, document what you're doing. Is it a reasonable and prudent action? Service and liquidate your SBA loans. Hey, if this wasn't SBA, would you do it, right? Include that 7A lender matrix as part of your documentation. And the greatest thing that you can do is when you do your hard file, if you can file your file in your hard file or even in your electronic file if you're there, according to the SBA's 1010 purchase demand kit, it'll help you so much in the future if you have to actually have the loan purchased. Here's our resources. We can find these are different things that you have. There's our website for Fresno and for Little Rock on here. And now let's go with some questions, if we have any questions on here. Do we have questions?
Hi, John. This is Onika. Just wanted to say to you that as long as your schedule permits, we do have the time. And for lenders on the line, I do recognize that it is very close to 3 p.m. If you do have the time, please stay on. John, as you can see, is a very prolific speaker, and he's dynamic, and he knows and loves what he's doing, so please pick his brain. If you do have to drop off, that is fine. I'll reiterate, this call is being recorded so that you will have the material. You'll have the PowerPoint and the recording once we have it available. Just wanted to make sure and put that commercial in there.
And ladies and gentlemen, as a reminder, if you'd like to submit a written question, you can do so by using the chat feature, which is located at the bottom right-hand side of your screen. Please choose all panelists from the Send To drop-down menu. If you'd like to ask a question over the phone line, simply press #2, that's pound, and then 2 on your telephone keypad. And we did receive several written questions during the event. Would you like me to read those out for you, or would you like to just go through those yourself?
Go ahead and read it out.
Okay, so the first one I have here, content-wise, is do we only follow the 7A lender matrix once the loan has been dispersed? Correct? If there are changes prior to disbursement, we follow processing guidelines, or do we send it back to SBA?
Okay, good question. That's that question. Has the loan been dispersed or not? If you look at the 7A matrix, it actually, that first section, that first what I call paragraph up there, that's going to give you the authority, or does it require SBA approval for loans that have not been dispersed. So you still would use the 7A matrix. I always start with that. And if my loan has not been dispersed and I'm doing some kind of correction to it, then it's going to go to the Loan Guarantee Process Center. So you would not send it to Fresno or Little Rock. It'll go to the Loan Guarantee Process Center. And you have to remember, okay, what is my Community Advantage, what's it called, procedure guide. I keep changing names on that. Yeah, the participant guide. What does my Community Advantage participant guide say? Right? So my maximum loan amount is $250,000. So I want to make sure that I'm looking at my Community Advantage for the maximum loan amounts. There's some eligibility questions. Those are going to be 50-10-5 questions. But if the loan has not been dispersed, you're still going to look at your 7A matrix, and you'll submit that change into the a Loan Guarantee Process Center. That's if you did it as a non-delegated lender.
And we do have a question waiting over the phone lines. I'm going to go ahead and unmute that line.
Sure.
Please go ahead. Your line is open. Sir or madam, can you check your own device and make sure it's not muted on your end?
Hi, this is Don Medley, Kathy Morant, and Ron. We're from Prince George's Financial Services Corporation. Our question is, how long do you have to report a paid-off loan on 1502?
All right. Good question. Once that loan is paid off, let's say they pay it off in the middle of the month. What month? We're in September right now. Let's say it got paid off. Let's say the loan gets paid off today, right? Today's the 18th, and that loan gets paid off today. I'm going to show it on my, let's see, that would be October report, because that October report is for September. Once I put it on that report, I'm not going to ever report it again.
Okay, so we've gotten errors from doing that. The loan pays off. We report it the month it paid off in the following month, and then we're told that you should have put it on there, and then we report it again.
Is it?
We get contacted.
Yeah, it's paid in full, correct?
Correct, paid in full.
It was paid in full. Okay. Sometimes what happens is, and I've noticed this in the past, you'll report it on the 18th as paid in full, but your October report, which is due, the third business day of the month, unless the third business day is not a business day, and then you have the next business day plus 2-day grace period.
Right.
And my bank used to do this. We would report it paid in full on the 18th, and then we would not report it on the next month, on October's, and then we would get dinged for that. But once it shows paid in full, it should not. So my thing to do would be go to E-Tran and check, is it showing off as paid in full in E-Tran?
Okay.
And if it's showing paid in full in E-Tran, what's going on with Colson? I would give them a call and say, wait a minute, this loan was paid in full. Has it been like 2 or 3 months?
Sometimes it's 2 months. I have to report it, even though let's assume it pays off on the 15th of this month. And when I'm doing my report for September, let's say it paid off in September, and when I'm submitting my September report and I put that it's been paid off in full, then I have to report it again for another month.
Are you reporting it as a 6, a code 6?
Yes, paid in full.
Because once it's paid in full, you can't keep reporting a paid in full loan. So there has to be some kind of balance or something like that.
We agree.
Yeah, you know what I would do? If you could give me a call, maybe afterwards here.
Yeah, afterwards we can put you in touch with the folks at Colson that will be able to assist you with the with your 1502 issues. As a matter of fact, can you do this for me? My email is onica.browne. If you can send me an email with your contact information, I will respond with the contact information for Colson, who is the FTR. Oh, gosh, I'm going to lose that. But anyway, they're the organization that manages the 1502 reporting for SBA. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we do have a number of written questions that have submitted. I'm going to go to the next one. It says, Gossett is talking about CA loans that are not sold on the secondary regarding increasing maturity. Please confirm.
That would be on both. And if I'm going to increase my maturity, that's a unilateral action. But if it has been sold on the secondary market, I have to get investor approval. I would send a request to, now this is prior to maturity, I would have to send a request to Colson, which is called the FTA, Fiscal Transfer Agent. But I'm going to send my request to Colson that says, hey, we're extending maturity from this date to this date. Secondary market could come back and say no. If that's the case, our hands are kind of tied. What's the purpose for increasing it on the maturity? Are you talking about increasing maturity? I think I saw the question on here. If you're just increasing the loan amount, you still have to get that approval from secondary market if it's sold on the secondary market. If it's a maturity and the loan has already matured and we want to extend maturity and the loan has already matured, then I've got to submit that to the SBA, whether it's been secondary market or not. So if it's sold on the secondary market, I'll send it there, and then I'm going to get my approval, then I'm going to send it to the SBA. And there's a grace period, because if it matures today and you go into the E-Tran tomorrow, next week, or whatever, it'll usually allow you to do that. Once it hits about 30 days, it will not allow you to extend maturity in E-Tran.
And we do have another question on the line. Please go ahead. Your line has been opened.
Yes, how you doing? This is Justin Nabio from Empire State CDC. I had a question about loan deferments. It does say that it's unilateral according to the matrix, but is there a limit? Could the lender defer payments 9 months on a unilateral basis, or do we have to notify the SBA? Is there a certain point where we have to either notify the SBA or request their approval?
Okay, what I would do, because it talks about deferments in the 5057-2. Now, you're with the CDC, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and 504s are typically a little bit different. So you got to remember, okay, this is not a 504, this is actually a 7A.
No, yeah. Well, all right. I'm also from New York.
And they can.
Yeah.
But you should do your deferments in 6-month increments. And what Chapter 12 says, 5057-2, Chapter 12, it's the same in the 5055. But 5057-2, Chapter 12 says it's a short-term solution to a short-term problem. Is it seasonal? What's going on here? If I do a deferment and then I do my catch-up and everything, and then 3 months later I need to do another deferment, and then again another deferment, what's going on? Maybe we need to do a liquidation. Maybe we need to do something. But if I can show, once again, this goes to document, because Chapter 14 says that the lender is expected to do all they can do, or to make a good faith effort to help a delinquent borrower bring their loan current, right? So what am I doing? Typically, deferments are short-term solutions to short-term problems. If I'm to go on 3 years of deferments, there's probably another issue there, right? Yeah. So let's end our 6-month deferment. What is happening? Maybe things are improving. Okay, I've adjusted this. Maybe I want to do another 6 months deferment. But I've got to be able to document what I'm doing and why I've done it. And that's going to go into my file. Why? Because if I have to go and have the loan purchased, that's where that question is going to come in. It's going to say, hey, wait a minute. Now, if you'll notice on the 7A matrix, it just says deferments are a unilateral action. Unless it's sold on the secondary market, then you can do 1 3-month deferment without SBA approval, or investor approval if it's sold on the secondary market. After you go 90 days or 3 months, then you have to get investor approval for that.
Yes, correct. Okay.
Okay. So yes, as a CDC, you're taking on the 7A, like a 7A lender hat, change hat, CDC hat, 7A hat. I can do this. This is a unilateral action as long as I'm not doing it so that my borrower can make payments to my other loan, my non-SBA loan. If they're making payments to my non-SBA loan, then that becomes a preference.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have any other questions?
We do have several other written questions that have been submitted. The next one is asking clarification. We can extend maturity date as long as it is no more than 10 years from the original maturity date, or is it 10 years from the closing date?
A maturity date, your original maturity date. The SOP reads extend 10 years beyond original maturity. So be careful with that, because if I've done a loan for 12 months or 12 months, and then I've extended maturity once, I've extended maturity twice, now I'm going to go 10 years, I go back to my original maturity date. If my original maturity date was 2 years, and I extend maturity another 2 years, and then when I go to do 10 years, I'm going to go from my original date, not from the most recent date, and not from disbursement, but from maturity date. So when was my original maturity?
All right, next question. Could you please provide an example of when there is an increase of loan amount after the total loan has been dispersed?
Oh, yeah. Okay, so we've done a loan. Maybe I've done a loan. I've done a 7(a) term loan. I've done it for $200,000, and I've done it for, equipment or whatever. And the borrower comes back to me, 2 years later, and he says, hey, we need another set of equipment. We need to buy this machine. It's $40,000. It's a laser cutting device. It looks like the size of a printer or fax machine. It's cost $40,000. Okay. I can do a brand new loan or I can increase that loan. In this case, I might just increase that loan because it's the same kind of, use of proceeds there, equipment. So yeah, that would be a real life scenario.
Okay, next question. Is a subordination still unilateral if new monies are involved?
Okay, great question, because that becomes a cash-out subordination. Once again, the 7(a) matrix and Chapter 3 in the 5057-2 talks about authority. And, yes, that's a unilateral action. That would be a unilateral action. You want to make that decision. Now, you still have to stay within program guidelines and things like that. So what I would ask my borrower or the new lenders, what is the use of proceeds? They're refinancing the house, and they're taking cash out to improve the property. That's one thing. They're taking cash out on the house, and they want to go to Vegas. And I'm taking and you laugh. I was at a bank, and I had a customer come in. He wanted to get a loan. And why do you want a loan? I'm taking my friends to Vegas. Probably not going to work. So that's a unilateral action. Stay within program guidelines. Document what you're doing.
Next question. How long do we report a paid-off loan on 1502?
We were just looking at that one earlier. The lady had called in. Once it's paid off, the report for the month that it was paid off. So if we pay it off in September, my 1502 report will be the October, within the first, 3 days of the month, plus the 2 days grace period, plus the weekend or whatever. Usually it works out to be the 7th or 8th of the month. Once I reported on that as a 6, as paid in full, I should not have to report that loan again.
Okay, and the final question we received so far. What if a borrower whose loan was sold on the secondary market wants to sell business for less than remaining balance or else has to declare BK?
Okay, we're looking at a worked out situation here in viability. In this case, I'm going to start with going to the investor and saying, hey, we need to, now let's back up. He's going to sell it, he's going to take the funds, and he's going to pay the loan down. There's going to be a balance remaining. Is he going to get a job someplace else and continue making payments? Or are we doing a liquidation activity here? If we're doing a liquidation activity, I'm going to end up buying it back from the investor. I'm just going to go to the investor and say, hey, here's what we've got. We've got a problem. It's a short sale. And they're going to say, hey, take it back, right? But if he's doing the short sale because he just wants to get out of the business, he's got money, and what we're going to do is continue making payments, then I don't necessarily have to do that. Although, when we do this, think of the note, the 147, the SBA note, and there is a section in there that talks about default. And what would be a default? Change in business, right? If he's closing his business, he's selling it off. He no longer is going to own the business. Then we might want to actually do a liquidation activity on that in that case, because what he's also saying to avoid bankruptcy. So I'm going to jump into a liquidation activity. I'm going to purchase it back from Colson. I'm going to get that sale done. I'm going to apply funds towards principal, and sit down with the borrower and figure out, is there money? Does he have monies anywhere else? What do we need to do? Do we need to submit the loan for purchase? Do we need to charge it off? Does this go to Treasury? What do we need to do at that point?
Okay, we do have a couple more questions that have come in. We are a new CDFI doing SBA CA loans. Do we have to give up the original promissory notes and mail them over to Colson Services? This is because SBA requires possession of collateral, in this case, possession of notes.
Wait, read that again?
Sure. We are a new CDFI doing SBA CA loans. Do we have to give up the original promissory notes and mail them over to Colson Services?
Do you mean if you're selling the loan?
Would you like me to read the rest of it?
Oh, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay. No, it's okay. This is because SBA requires, in quotations, possession of collateral, in this case, possession of notes. Then we will get the original notes back as soon as they repay the SBA loan / pay down the line of credit. Is this accurate? We keep getting conflicting answers from our LSP banks.
I'm going to have to look that one up. Normally what would happen with a 7A lender, that's their note. And when you're a 7A lender, it's your documentation. Now, they'll use SBA notes and things like that, but they hold on to all that because the SBA is just guaranteeing that loan. So for the CA, it doesn't sound right. It sounds like I would have my note because I have lent the money out like a bank. I'm going to get paid by the borrower, and then I'm going to submit that portion that goes to the SBA, the guarantee, the fee or whatever, or if I've sold the loan on the secondary market, I'm going to submit that money to Colson for the secondary market. Typically, we're not taking like an assignment of the note over until loan gets purchased. But I'm going to have to ask that because you're a new CDFI, and I don't know the answer to that one, not off the top of my head.
Also, this is Onika, and so for that CDFI, if you can also send me an email at onica.browne@sba.gov. I will also put you in touch with the Colson Servicing Group, who is the FTA that manages the 1502 reporting and secondary market process, and I can also put you in touch with the SBA person on site who is in charge of the 1502 secondary market process, and they will be able to answer those questions for you, but make sure you send me an email.
And I did just send out Onika's email address in the chat feature, so if you need to look at that, you can do so. And we do have another question. During bankruptcy, does the lender send payment to Colson or SBA?
Okay, here's the interesting question on this one. What's happened during the bankruptcy? Is the borrower still making payments, right? So let's say this loan was not sold on the secondary market. He goes into bankruptcy. He's still sending payments over to the SBA or to the lender. The lender's going to be reporting on their 1502 report. When would we stop doing that? When you submit for purchase and SBA purchases the loan, and now you're receiving funds off of the bankruptcy, but we've purchased the loan. Maybe there was a lien in place. Maybe it's, whatever's going on. And we're receiving funds. At that point, then the funds are going to come to the SBA through pay.gov. But if I have a bankruptcy going, I'm still receiving funds. I'm still reporting to Colson that way. Once I turn around and submit my purchase demand kit in, and it gets purchased and payments are coming in, then that's going to go to the SBA through pay.gov. I hope that answers that question.
And once again, ladies and gentlemen, if you have a question, please use your chat feature at the bottom right-hand side of your screen if you wish to send in a written question. And if you'd like to ask a question over the telephone, please simply press pound 2. That's the pound button and the number 2 on your telephone keypad.
And I will say, I apologize. I stumbled over some of my words earlier today. Sometimes that happens. It's a little bit harder when you're doing it on the phone compared to in public.
And John, at this time, we do not have any further questions.
Great. Creek Alley, there you go. All right. Well, thank you all very much. We are going to be doing a liquidation class tomorrow, and then next month I think there is a continuation on servicing, and we will delve deeply into the 1502 report.
Yes, thank you all for joining. John, thank you so much for this presentation. Again, I cannot emphasize how valuable your time has been to us. I'm sure all of our lenders will appreciate it. Once again, for the folks on the line, there are folks that have informed me that you had some challenges getting on to the audio portion of the call. We will be sending the material out to all of the participants on the line right after this call. This call has been recorded. Once we have the recording, we will also share that with all of our lenders. Chris Webb just walked into the room. Chris, I don't know if you have any parting words for folks.
No, I've been listening. John, you are the Gandalf of 7A. Way to go. And we'll see if we can find you some older bands to reference next time, maybe the Ink Dots or the Everly Brothers. But great job. And if you have any additional questions, please email them in, like Anika said, and we will recap them in other webinars to come. Thank you all for your time and your contribution to this educational webinar series.
All right, and we will see you all same time, same channel tomorrow for part 1 of liquidation.
Thank you to our speakers, and thank you to our audience members for joining today's conference. The session has concluded, and you may now disconnect.